Dan Illman, Matt Bernier kicking off the late pick 4 at Del Mar on Sunday with the $75,000 Wicker Stakes. All our stakes previews this weekend presented by DRF Bets. Check out this offer for DRF Bets members, the Weekend Warrior Bonus Series, where you can earn up to a $180 bonus for the Travers and the Pacific Classic. The way to do so, bet $25 to win in the first race on Saturday and Sunday at Del Mar and or Saratoga. Win or lose, you earn points up to that $180 bonus. Here's the field for the Wicker. It is a big and bulky field, a great betting race for $75,000. Let's take them in post position order, Matt. Gold Rush Dancer won the Long Acres Mile last year like a serious miler. 97 Beyer speed figure. He had always been a consistent horse, and ever since that race, he has been a dud. What happened?
I have no idea, because I mean, you want to talk about a stark drop-off in form. He went from being a really solid horse and, like you say, finally culminating in that graded stakes win up at Emerald to just basically being terrible. And the only thing I can think is that the goal here is to get back to the Long Acres Mile. So they're going to take a shot in a race like this. I don't know that he's ready to go to win in a race like this, or heck, even be competitive, but I wouldn't be surprised if eventually we did see his best if they do choose to go back to the Long Acres Mile.
He has some speed and a valuable inside post, so he should be able to obtain good position going into the first turn, as should the number 2, Forever Juanito. This is a horse that's okay. He doesn't win very often. His last win came back at Del Mar in November of 2015, but we haven't seen this horse in a long time. This is about an 8-month layoff, and the last time we did see him, he was in against a good horse. He will only beat him by a length, and he will came back to Beyer 99 in the graded Seabiscuit.
Yeah, Forever Juanito is a horse that he outruns his odds quite frequently, and I agree. He's going to be forwardly placed. He's got some speed. You brought up He Will. Tequila Joe came back and earned a 93. Beyer in the third place finisher, a Red Tie Day, he earned an 84. So he's been keeping decent enough company. The question that I have for a horse like this is, how fast are they going to go early, and ultimately does that compromise his chances?
I think that's a very fair point, because there is a lot of speed. We already mentioned that Gold Rush Dancer has some speed. Forever Juanito obviously has speed. We'll get to Conquest Tsunami in a little bit. Cistrone, the number 3, is not exactly slow out of the gate. He can be close. This is his important third start of the form cycle for John Sadler. I like the 2 sprints to a route move here. The Beyers are going the right way. This is a solid horse that usually gives a good account of himself. I wouldn't be surprised if Cistrone works out a decent trip, but can he rate and finish?
I don't think so. I think his best game is when he's forward, and I'll admit I've been disappointed in this horse. I thought he was going to be much better than he has turned out. Now, he's not a bad horse, but I just thought he would be considerably better than this. I agree with you. 2 sprints to a route, I think he's going to have the foundation, and the distance isn't going to be any sort of an issue for him. The question comes down to, is he as good sitting off? Because I think those 2 horses drawn to his inside, I think naturally they're faster than him.
You've been disappointed in Cistrone. I've been slightly disappointed in Giant Payday. I thought he would turn out better, but it's now 18 starts, and he's still yet to Beyer anything better than an 88, and you'd have to think he'd have to run faster to win a race like the Wicker. In his most recent turf start, he finished just behind Vittori Kin, who came back to win a graded race at Churchill Downs, the Louisville, with a 93 Beyer, and he is going to get the right pace setup, and I guess you could also make the argument, well, here's another one of those East Coast horses getting ready to bully the West Coast runners. Still, I'm not completely convinced.
Nor am I, but it is one of those interesting spots where you may be getting a very, very square price on an East Coast horse going west on the turf, and realistically draw a line through the Brooklyn. That wasn't ever going to work out for him. You get him back to the turf against a good field, but not a field of superstars. Look, I don't love him, but I wouldn't be surprised if he ran well.
Editori is in sneaky good form, and the Connections took a big chance running him in the Grade 1 Turf Classic against the likes of Beach Patrol and Synchrony and Yoshida. They caught yielding turf to boot, and this horse, I think, all in all, ran just fine. Synchrony came back to run third with a 98 Beyer speed figure at Arlington. His race prior at this distance at Golden Gate, I thought, was excellent, and he's got a little bit of tactical speed. This race might set up for Editori.
Yeah, I have to be honest. To me, the San Francisco Mile is really the race that you want to use as sort of the barometer for this horse, because realistically, I think he was best that day. If it wasn't for a perfect trip for Flamboyant shooting up the wood, I think Editori wins that race. And you can go a few starts back, going a mile and an 8th at Santa Anita. He had a little bit of traffic trouble at the top of the lane in that San Gabriel as well. I kind of feel like he's fired fresh in the past, and this is the distance that he really wants. I agree with you. I think he's one that could be okay at a square number.
After Isotherm won the San Marcos in February of 2017, you and I thought he could be the boss in the Southern California turf division for older horses. They decided to run him in the big cap. It was a big mistake. It cost him a lot of training time. He has not exactly come back the same horse, but maybe you could make the argument in his most recent start he was too close to the pace in a race that featured a good horse in Sharp Samurai who's returning in the Eddie Reed. For the most part, that race has come back weak.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, thus far, you haven't looked at a heck of a lot positive coming out of that. I believe the buyers so far have been low 70 and mid 80. I kind of feel like this horse, his career is going to boil down to that race when they went to the big cap with him, because it looked like he was on a good sort of trajectory where he and It's in the Post could have had a nice little sort of battle, a nice little rivalry, but they chose to go to the dirt, and then obviously the wheels fell off. I don't know where he is right now. I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. I suppose he has some back class and some back races that make him competitive.
He has back class. I think he'll revert to the stalking tactics that should play well in here, and he has Phil D'Amato in his corner. Here's the formulator fact. Over the past 90 days, older horses making their second start off the layoff in turf routes. 5 for 10, 9 in the money, a $5.22 return on investment. Tool Fog is the number 7. This horse has won 2 out of his last 3 races. He's very lightly raced. The main problem is, well, not only class, but pace, as we see from the Timeform US pace projector. They got Tool Fog out there on the lead. I'm not sure if he's going to fast enough to run with stretch-out sprinter Conquest Tsunami, and if he is, his goose might be cooked.
I think he's a decent little horse, but boy, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, okay, if you clear off, that's all well and good. You got to put away other speeds, though, and then you've got to hold off the quality closers. And if you sit just off, I don't think you're nearly as good, and you don't have as much of a kick as some of the more likely win contenders. Again, I think he's a nice little horse, and the connections have got to be thrilled. If you believe that price tag, they paid $2,400 for him, and he's over $150 in career earnings. I think he's nice. I just don't think this is a spot for him.
I'm a big fan of Liam the Charmer, number 8. He's not even in the pace projector. We've got the 4 even off the page. He's going to be so far back, and that's right. He's really not a miler. He's returning off of a long layoff. This is probably a prep for a race like the Del Mar Handicap at 1 mile and 3/8 a little bit later in the meet. I thought he ran well in the Whittingham 3 starts back, but layoff, distance a little bit too short. I'll keep an eye on him. I want to see a good, nice late run, and maybe I'll take him next time.
I agree with you. Del Mar Handicap feels like a good spot, 1 mile and 3/8. This mile seems entirely too short for him, but he's another one. I hate to say it. He's disappointed me throughout his career. It seems like when they've tested him, he hasn't really been able to hang with the big boys. Do you keep him in that sort of non-winner to 2 other than level? He fits. I'm hopeful to get a decent run like you made mention, and hopefully we can see him next time around.
Big Score won fresh his career debut at Del Mar as a 2-year-old, and he has also graded stakes placed over this surface. This is going to be his first start in about 7 months, however, but the last time we saw him was the Mathis Brothers Mile. I thought he was compromised by a lack of pace and a pretty good winner named Bowie's Hero, who came back to run second in the Thunder Road with a 98, and then he won the Kilrow with a 103. We'll see him in the Eddie Reed.
Yeah, Big Score. He's fired fresh in the past. I think 1 mile is really what he wants, and Del Mar, he clearly has no issue with that turf course. I think if you're looking at a short list of contenders and horses that you have to use to kick off the pick 4, I think you have to use Big Score.
Colonist's last 2 races have resulted in career best Beyer speed figures. A 102 last time out in the Shoemaker Mile. Looked like he was getting outpaced a little bit on the turn, grinded it out down towards the inside in some minor traffic, and then galloped out great. You and I always feel that he wants a little bit more ground than the mile. The wise old owl, Rich Roble, though, he disagrees. He thinks you give this horse a right trip and pace scenario, and he might get the right trip with that red bar fast pace. Maybe Colonist, although I don't like the 5-1 on the line.
I don't either. I think he's going to be an underlay in a spot like this, but maybe he just needs a little bit of class relief, and maybe this is what he's needed all along. But I tend to agree with you. I know they tried him at that 1.5 miles, and that's what I had been licking my chops waiting for all along, and he disappointed me a little bit. But to be fair, It's in the Post and Hayabusa 1 at that time. We're both in raging form. Maybe he's a 1.25 mile type as opposed to a 1.5 miles. And again, these flat miles, he's run just well enough from a speed figure standpoint that I understand why the connections continue on with him. And again, maybe he just needed a little bit of class relief. Maybe he gets it on Sunday.
A lot of people forget that Conquest Tsunami is a stakes winner at 1 mile. Way back as a 2-year-old, he won a 1-turn mile stake at Churchill, the Street Sense, but he really is best known now as a turf sprinter. He just got good when Peter Miller took over and sent him down the hill. He ran great in Dubai. And while he was a good second last time out in the Jaipur, I was disappointed in the way he galloped out after that race. Pure Sensation, the horse that he was battling with, he didn't gallop out well. He didn't come back great, and I wonder if Conquest Tsunami gets burned out early going a mile. I like this horse a lot. I just don't love him at the mile.
I agree with you. I kind of feel like distance is going to be a problem for him. And also the way this race sets up on paper, I'm not convinced that this is going to be a favorable situation for him up on the front end. You combine that with the additional distance, and we're not talking about an eighth of a mile. It's an extra quarter mile that he's got to go. To me, there's just a lot of things going against him. The good news is if you're in the camp like you and I, he's going to take money in here. So that's going to be one horse that you don't have to worry about if you don't like him.
I'm done chasing Perfectly Majestic, which means he will win the Wicker on Sunday. His last win came in November of 2016, and I've been on him many times since. Lots of seconds, lots of thirds, including last time out in the Siren Lure, a race in which he was sort of in some traffic at the top of the stretch, and when he angled out, he came with the run. He's 0 for 14 at this distance, but it's within his scope, and finally, just finally, he might get the right pace scenario. He just isn't very trustworthy.
No, he's not. To me, he's the kind of horse you have to use underneath. 18 times second or third from 31 lifetime starts with only 4 victories. The one thing I will point out, you look at his career record at Del Mar, he's 3 for 8 and he's 7 of 8 in the money. This is a horse that clearly loves it in San Diego. I wouldn't be surprised if he came with a late bid and did what he normally does, run second or third.
Double Touch got the setup. 2 starts back going 6.5. They blitzed up early, 21-1, 43-2. Double Touch came from last and got up to win. In the Siren Lure, he was making up a little bit of late ground, but better horses weren't going as fast. That's really the key for Double Touch. He's going to get some pace. How does he class up with these horses?
I don't think he's quite as good as some of the best ones in here. I also question about distance with him. I know he has won at a mile in the past. I happen to think he's better going a little bit shorter. Again, we'll find out. Maybe from a class standpoint, this will be too much along with the additional distance. The good news is if you like him, you're going to get a very good number.
Let's take a look at our top selections for the Wickerr Stakes. Terrible post position for my pick, the number 14 Bombard, but it looks like his physical problems are behind him. He's a 5-year-old with only 9 starts on his record, but this is going to be his 3rd consecutive race without one of those pesky layoff lines interrupting things. He was gelded. He came back, 2 wins down the hill. I thought he was solid in the Siren Lure, beating 4 of these common rivals last time out, and he has one going a mile and an eighth. The question is, can he rate in the 2nd or 3rd flight, because he's not fast enough to make the lead. I'm hoping he just follows Conquest Tsunami out of there and maybe parks himself 3rd or 4th, maybe 3 wide going into the 1st turn.
Yeah, you know what? I think he's going to work out a good trip in here. I understand that post is miserable breaking from 14, but I think there's a real scenario with the amount of speed drawn to his inside. They're all going to go. He's probably going to just simply get outrun, plain and simple. But if he's sitting in sort of, like you say, 2-3 lengths off of it, I think the sitting isn't going to be any sort of an issue for him. And to me, he is the horse that you want to take out of that Siren Lure because he's paired up those 2 sprint races. I think Richard Mandela, obviously, we know what he's capable of. I think the distance is going to be right up his alley. And again, from a trip standpoint, if you think all those other horses on the front, they duke it out and they kind of take each other's, take the wind out of each other's sails, Bombard could work at a very, very nice situation in here. I think he's a live player.
Editore, your top pick should get the pace. Last time at a mile, he ran really, really well. Didn't score, but just missed in the San Francisco mile. I liked his race at Churchill. He classes up real well with these horses. Give me numbers because we're kicking off the pick 4.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have most of my eggs in these 4 horses basket, the 5, the 10, the 9, and the 14. I just think Editore, again, he is that kind of horse that he's maybe another one that just been a little bit too tough spots. And even with that run 2 starts back where he was unlucky, where he ended up having the worst of the 2 trips and only got beat by a neck, I think this is probably a good level for him. And if he can't get through here, then you got to start to reassess some things.
I'm going to go 14, 11, 10, and 12 in the Wicker. Race number 6 at Del Mar kicks off the 50-cent late pick 4. You can play it with DRF bets. New members can play the Weekend Warrior bonus series where you can earn up to a $180 bonus for the Travers and the Pacific Classic. Approximate post time for race number 6 at Del Mar on Sunday, the Wicker, 4:30 Pacific. Good luck.